In this lesson, we're going to finish up blocking in the rest of our room. Alright, so let's go ahead and block in the rest of our room. We want to create a couple of extra rooms to kind of make this appear as though it's just not an open room. Okay, with an area like this, the layout where it's completely open like this can be a little distracting, and it doesn't really provide any life. So we want to create some interior rooms. Maybe there would be something that looks like maybe a bathroom in here, and then maybe some sort of utility closet or something like that, just to add a little bit of interest to the room itself, give it a little bit more life. And so again, we're going to block this in just using very simple techniques. We're going to use a box to get this started. So we know that the Z is going to be set to 400, okay, the height of this. And then we want to set our X and Y values here. Let's go ahead and do 400 by 400 just to get us started here, and we'll place this in our scene. But before we move anything, let's hit Control Z one time. Let's set our grid. Let's turn that back on, and we'll have that set to 10, and we'll position this to where it's even with our objects here. So let's go ahead and go to our side view. Looking at that, I want the top of that to be at the top of the ceiling and the bottom matched up. Let's go ahead and position that to where it's up against the outside wall here. Okay, so just position that there. All right, perfect. And then let's go ahead and make sure that we are set up in our top view. Make sure that's up against that. There we go. And we're just setting it up against that outside there. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Let's go ahead and go to our perspective, and we'll take a look at what we have. And as you can see here, we still have our outside walls. And if we go to this point here, we can see the outside of those walls on the inside. Okay, so perfect. So this could serve as something like just a very small bathroom or something like that. We don't really know the exact use of that. And then we want to create another wall on the other side. But looking at this, that's pretty big. I'm not really happy with the overall size of that. So we can actually make this a little smaller. Let's go ahead and go in our X direction and make that 300. So to do that, look at your axis, and you just kind of want to think of what direction do I want this to change shape. In this case, I want it to be the X, so looking at that, let's go ahead and change that to 300, hit enter, and then this will allow you to kind of move the object around and get it right in there. So let's go ahead and position that up against the wall, and that looks good. It's on the outside here, on the outside there, so it's looking good. That gives us a little bit more room to play. Now, normally with things like that, a bathroom is not going to be all that large, so we're looking good. And let's go ahead and hit Control W, or actually, you know what? I'll show you another way to duplicate. Let's hold down Alt, and then let's move this over, and you'll notice that that's duplicating the brush. So we can now just position that over up against that wall, just like we did before, but we want to make this one smaller. Okay, we want to make it a little bit different. So I'm actually going to take this on the X direction. I'm going to make that 200, and actually do 200, not 2. And let's do the same thing on our Y, but still keeping it 400 on the height. Let's go ahead and position that to where it's up against that wall. Okay, looking at the outsides here, let's go ahead and position that, and it should butt up right up against that corner there. And we're looking good. Now, I know that it's going to be a little bit smaller, okay, so it's not necessarily 200 from this wall to the outside corner. It's actually going to be 190 because, remember, we put the box on the outside portion of the wall, and the wall thickness itself is 10. Okay, so, but it's not really anything that's going to bother us too much because this is just brushes. Okay, remember, this is just the blockout stage. It's not that important. We want to get kind of an idea of the size. We want to be fairly close, so a little discrepancy like that isn't going to hurt anything. Now let's finish this up by adding in a couple more elements. Maybe we want something like some beams that go across the ceiling or something like that. So I'm actually going to come in, I'm going to drag in another box, and this box I'm actually going to change the values here all the way around. Except for the Y direction, because the Y needs to be pretty lengthy. So on the X, let's go ahead and set this to like something like 25 and 25 on our Z. So we get something kind of like this really long beam here. And I'm going to position this right up against the ceiling. And we're going to push that back in the Y. and I'm going to continue to push that back. Now I'm going to show you a really quick trick here. Notice how that whenever we're moving that, we can push it so far and we can lose that in our viewport. But watch this. If I hold that and start to drag that and then hold down Shift and I move, I'm actually moving that object and the camera at the same time. And so that allows us to see the move gizmo at all times there. Now what I want to do at this point is I actually want to change the overall size of that. I'm not exactly sure exactly what that's going to be, but let's go to our top view and let's just simply edit it. Let's also position that over to the corner of that, so where it meets right there. And let's grab our geometry editing, and then go to Edit, select those corners there, or those vertices, and let's push that down in the Y. Let's try that one more time. Select those, select the Y axis, and I'm going to put that right on the outside of the wall there, just like that. And then let's go ahead and do the same thing here. Position that to the outside of that wall there. That should snap pretty close. Yep, looks good. Let's turn that off, and with that still selected, let's go to our perspective view. And we're going to go inside, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Alt to duplicate that, and then you can also hold down Shift and you can move your camera along with it. You can release Shift and that will stop the camera movement. So hold Shift to move your camera along with the object that you're moving, and then Alt will duplicate whenever you move it. Okay, so very, very cool. Got some little beams in here that kind of add a little bit of variation to the room itself. Now, we also have the option of adding something like little pillars in between these windows and things like that, just to kind of just add a little bit more depth to the room. Okay, think all directions whenever doing something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and actually let you do that. It's the exact same way that we created these pillars, but you want to think of the pillars that are going to start like right here. So pick a certain size. You might go with something like 50 instead of 25 on this one, and position that to where it's lengthwise. Okay, don't rotate it. Just work with these the X, Y, and Z positions. And in the next lesson, I'll kind of show you how I did that. I won't go through the steps, but I'll show you the overall values that I used and where I positioned those, and you should be able to get that from there. So in the next lesson, we'll have that finished out. We'll have all of this blocked out and ready to go. And then what we'll start to do is we'll start to talk about how to take static meshes from 3D software, import those into our project in our content browser, and then we'll start getting into the process of bringing those in and replacing our blocked out level with static meshes, because remember, static meshes are cheaper than these BSP objects. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started with that next.